Hello, I'm Mohsen Jamal and you watch Afghan News. The UN General Assembly called on Monday on countries to reiterate and scale up their support for Afghanistan during its transition period and outlined 6 major areas the country should focus on to ensure its long-term stability and progress. In a resolution adopted unanimously by the member states, the Assembly called for increased efforts in the areas of security, justice and governance, social and economic development, reconciliation and integration, regional cooperation and strategic partnership. Security remains a top priority, with the Assembly noting that despite visible progress, terrorism is still a major threat, putting at risk all other areas where there has been progress. The Assembly welcomed the start of the transition process of security responsibility, which began in July, and called on countries to provide the necessary technical and financial support to create favorable conditions so that Afghan security forces can fully handle security needs in the near future. Germany called for the adoption of a United Nations resolution on Monday to support Afghanistan's move from transition to transformation with the support of the international community. Germany, which contributes troops to NATO forces in Afghanistan, will also hold an international conference in Bonn in early December to review the mandate in the war-torn country, said German UN Ambassador Peter Wittig, adding that the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon will lead the UN delegation to Bonn. Wittig told the UN General Assembly that for the first in 10 years, there is a clear timeline and a clear international strategy for a fast, complete transition of lead security responsibility to the Afghan authorities based on clear criteria. Wittig said the resolution supported by the European Union would improve the operational capability of the international community in Afghanistan. The mandate was worked out in 2002 at a Bonn conference after the Taliban was toppled from power. The Kremlin has trouble understanding recent U.S. policy announcements that it would pull its troops out of Afghanistan by 2014, but all at the same time built new military bases there. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Monday. At a Moscow press conference, Lavrov said that one contradicts the other and that they are trying to figure out what is going to happen. Lavrov said it was important for the U.S. and Russia to have a clear understanding of both countries' plans for Central and South Asia, particularly to coordinate efforts in countries with security problems like Afghanistan. U.S. President Barack Obama in June said all American combat troops would leave Afghanistan by 2014. Russia has generally been critical of the United States intervention in Afghanistan, but has assisted Washington and NATO with intelligence thought to be collected by a network of Kremlin spies in Central Asia. 4 civilians were killed and 3 others, including a woman, wounded when their vehicle hit a roadside bomb in East Afghanistan on Tuesday, police said. The bomb was planted under a bridge in Alinagar district of Laghman province before it ripped through a civilian van. Provincial Police Chief Abdurrahman Sarjangi told Afghannews. Roadside bombs are frequently planted by insurgents, but there was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. According to the United Nations, the number of civilians killed in violence in Afghanistan rose by 15% in the first 6 months of this year to 1,462, with insurgents responsible for 80% of the killings. The European Union's executive on Monday pledged 1.5 million euros in food aid to help Afghanistan cope with a drought in its northern provinces. The European Commission, through non-governmental organizations on the ground, will hand out money directly or through cash for work schemes to help the local population buy food, the Brussels-based body said in a statement. EU Humanitarian Aid Commissioner Kristalina Georgieva said that close to 3 million people are already suffering due to the drought, and they fear the crisis will worsen before the 2012 harvest. The aid pledged on Monday is expected to help 72,000 people and will bring the EU's funding response to the drought crisis to 4.1 million euros, the Commission added. Afghan and NATO-led troops during a joint operation in Helmand province eliminated a suspected Taliban local leader on Monday. A press release of the military alliance said on Tuesday. The statement added that Afghan and coalition security forces conducted the operation in search of a Taliban leader in Harisaraj district, Helmand province, and killed him. Without identifying his name, the press release said that the leader directed the placement of roadside bombs and planned attacks against coalition forces. And it also said that 2 of its service members have been killed in southern Afghanistan. The coalition said that 1 service member died in an insurgent attack and the other was killed in a roadside bombing. No other details were disclosed about the deaths which occurred on Monday. The United States has announced a new set of sanctions targeting Iran's energy and financial sectors in an effort to apply greater pressure on Tehran to halt its suspected nuclear weapons program. The new sanctions announced on Monday, which were coordinated with the United Kingdom and Canada, built on elements of previous sanction efforts. The U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton named Iran as an area of primary money laundering concern, a step designed to dissuade non-U.S. banks from dealing with 8 blacklisted 11 entities suspected of aiding its nuclear programs, and expanded sanctions to target companies that aid its oil and petrochemical industries. The UK also ordered all British financial institutions to stop doing business with their Iranian counterparts, including the Iranian Central Bank. The series of announcements were in response to a November 8th International Atomic Energy Agency report that presented intelligence suggesting Iran had worked on designing an atomic bomb. It may still be secretly carrying out related research. Activists in Egypt are calling for a mass demonstration in Cairo against the country's ruling military council after 3 days of clashes between protesters and government forces left at least 33 people dead and hundreds injured. Groups including the Coalition of Revolution Youth and the April 6 movement, which spearheaded the revolution that toppled Hosni Mubarak in February, called for a 1 million-man march on Tuesday afternoon in Tahrir Square to put pressure on the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces to cede power to civilian leaders. Egypt's cabinet, headed by Issam Sharaf, the interim prime minister, offered its resignation late on Monday, but a military official said the council was seeking agreement on a new prime minister before it would accept the resignation. Some 20,000 defiantly demonstrated in Tahrir Square overnight, but the protests have yet to attract the hundreds of thousands who toppled President Hosni Mubarak in January and February. After expressing deep regret for the victims and these painful incidents, the ruling council appealed for calm late on Monday and called for crisis talks with political forces to find a way forward, as well as calling for a Justice Ministry investigation into the latest unrest. And that's all for now. Thanks for staying with us.